very brief. Ruach HaKodesh has been teaching me how to listen. And what I mean by really listening, like, we all know that you can hear and you can listen. And they're very, very similar, except one requires a little more effort than the other. So hearing is something that we naturally can do. I mean, unless you're deaf, unfortunately, you can't hear. But hearing is something that we naturally do. But listening is something that we actually have to put effort into. Brief example, if you have kids, for instance, or if you have nieces and nephews and you've ever watched them, or so on and so forth. So say the kids are in a room somewhere and you can hear them playing, laughing and joking or whatnot. Like, you hear them, but you're not really paying attention, right? But then when it gets quiet, all of a sudden you start to listen. You start to listen because you're trying to figure out, you know, if you need to get up and go in there to see what's going on. And after like a minute or two, if you don't hear anything, usually you do get up and you go and investigate as to why there's no more sound coming out of the room. And even when you look at the definitions, I choose Merriam-Webster because it's just I'm familiar with it. But when you look on at the definitions, they're very similar, but you'll see that listening requires a little bit more effort. Like, for instance, it says to pay attention to a sound, to give thoughtful attention to, or to give consideration. And then it says to be alert to catch an expected sound. So basically, you can hear stuff. We all hear stuff. And sometimes you can put a little bit more effort into hearing as well. But like right now, I can hear the road noise, but I'm not really listening out for it. You know what I'm saying? So what Ruach HaKodesh was talking to me about was, he was like, you don't just hear the words that people are saying, but really listen. Because the Sefer doesn't just give us the character and, display the character and the nature of Abba Yahuwah, Yahushua HaMashiach, Ruach HaKodesh. That is the main purpose of it. But we also get to see the characteristics of the fallen nature. And the fallen angels and mankind, prior to accepting Yahushua HaMashiach, all show. My brain is not working this morning, you guys. Got almost no sleep. But they all show characteristics, attributes of the fallen nature. But you have to listen for these things, because the fallen nature sounds, if you're just hearing, it sounds very similar to the righteous nature of Yahuwah Zabaoth. So, for instance, in conversation with people, especially people that say, you know, I follow this, I follow that, whatnot and other. When you start listening to the things that they're saying, you'll be able to catch whether or not, you'll be able to discern whether or not it's your father, Yahuwah, or it's not. And I mean listen, like really listening. For instance, I used to say I'm spiritual. This is something I used to say a long time ago. I'm spiritual, I'm spiritual, I'm spiritual. But then I had to realize that don't mean nothing, because Hasatan is a spirit. So being spiritual doesn't necessarily mean that you're Yali. Doesn't mean you're righteous. You can be spiritual all day. So you have to really listen to these things, because you'll hear people in the churches saying stuff like this. If everything is about, like, so the self-love movement that we had, you had to really listen to the things that these people were saying about self-love, because when you really listen to what they were saying, because we are supposed to love ourselves. We are supposed to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. So we are supposed to love ourselves. But when you really start to listen to the people that were pushing this self-love movement in the church, you'll see that it was a selfishness. It wasn't a selflessness. It wasn't a love. It wasn't a natural love that you should have for yourself so you could love your neighbor. It was, I'm putting myself above everybody because that's what I think about myself. I'm above everybody. But you had to listen to hear that. And whose agenda is that? Hashatan. Because if you don't worship him, he's okay with you worshiping yourself, just as long as you're not worshiping Yahuwah, Yahusha, Hamashiach. He's okay with you worshiping yourself, because you are a false idol. You are a false god. So he's okay with that. But But you got to listen for these things. And this is one of the reasons why we are supposed to be slow to speak and quick to listen. Quick to listen. Other places it says, he that has an ear, let him hear. But in that particular scripture, it says, slow to speak and quick to listen. Not quick to hear, quick to listen. Okay? There's a reason for that. We're supposed to be meek. Meek does not mean doormat. Okay? When you are a meek person, that means that you're not moved by people's attitudes. If you say something and they catch an attitude, they don't agree with you, and like their attitude starts to escalate, their tone starts to escalate, you're not moved by that. That's meekness. It is not you being a doormat. Okay? And we're supposed to be as sly as snakes, but as gentle as a dove. Which again is speaking to being meek. Being slow to speak and quick to listen is speaking about being meek. And the meek shall inherit the earth. I'm just saying. There's a reason why Yahushua said these things. So, listen, Linda. You got to really listen, because you can hear all day long. But if you ain't listening, if you're not paying attention, if you're not being deliberate, you're going to miss some things. You're going to miss some wolves in sheep's clothing. Because, again, these ruachs, these unclean ruachs, or I should say ruachov, they will sound like Abba Yahuwah all day long. That is their goal. I mean, first of all, you got to understand, they used to dwell with him. So naturally, they're going to sound like him. But the motive behind it, you can hear the motive behind it. You can hear the agenda behind it. You can hear it if you just listen. And you'll start to hear. When you listen, you'll start to hear. You'll start to hear that it's not Abba. It's not Abba. That's not him. That's not his voice. He's not going to tell us anything that's going to elevate ourselves above other people. He's not going to tell us anything that is going to go against his will at all. We're supposed to be selfless. So, just going to leave you guys with that this morning. Yeah, listen. Really listen. Okay? Really listen. Until next time.